What if the secret to Demi Moore's ageless glow at 62 wasn't a luxury cream or a hidden procedure, but a terrifying realization? She just finally unexposed to the world. Most people see the red carpet perfection, but they missed the one silent confession that changes everything we thought we knew about her. For decades, we have stared at her, mesmerized by her defiance of time. We look at her long, dark hair, her flawless skin, and her incredibly toned physique, and we immediately assume she has access to a fountain of youth that remains locked away from the rest of us. We analyze her skincare routines, we speculate on her aesthetic treatments, and we search for the physical blueprint of her eternal youth. But Demi's true revelation has nothing to do with gravity-defying serums or strict dietary regimens. It is a raw psychological truth born out of a career spent under the most brutal microscope in the world. It is the realization that the greatest threat to our youth isn't the natural passage of time, but the quiet, everyday violence we commit against ourselves in the pursuit of perfection. When she stepped onto the red carpet, surrounded by a global audience waiting to judge her every wrinkle, she wasn't hiding behind a mask. She was showing us the result of a hard-won peace treaty with her own reflection. To understand how she got here, we have to look past the glamour and look directly into the mirror that nearly destroyed her. To truly understand the depth of this unexposed truth, we have to look back at the journey that brought Demi Moore to this pivotal point in her life. Born in November 1962, she rose to fame as part of the iconic Brat Pack, eventually becoming one of the most bankable and scrutinized actresses in Hollywood history. She was the woman who posed naked and pregnant on the cover of Vanity Fair, shattering societal taboos and redefining how the world viewed expectant mothers. She was the star who commanded a record-breaking $12.5 million for her role in Striptease, earning both historical pay and a wave of intense media backlash that labeled her with the snide nickname Demi Moore. But behind the scenes, that monumental success came with a devastating cost. In her raw memoir, Inside Out, Demi opened up about her past struggles with severe eating disorders, extreme overexercising, and a relentless pressure to mold her body into an industry-dictated ideal. She spent years viewing her body not as a sanctuary, but as an instrument that needed to be whipped into submission. This toxic dynamic reached its cinematic peak recently with her starring role in the satirical body horror film, The Substance. In the movie, she plays Elizabeth Sparkle, a fading celebrity fitness host who is fired on her 50th birthday for being deemed too old. In her desperation, Elizabeth turns to a black market drug that promises to create a younger, more beautiful version of herself. It is a story about the ultimate self-destruction that occurs when we allow society to dictate our value based solely on our external appearance. This movie served as the ultimate canvas for Demi to expose the raw, unfiltered truth about the cost of chasing an illusion. But what if I told you that the most horrifying scene in that movie wasn't the monster that sprouted from her spine, but a hidden psychological transition that happens to millions of people every single day without them ever realizing it? We think we're looking at a fictional Hollywood horror story, but the truth is, there is a real-world chemical reaction that occurs in our brains when we reject our own reflection, a form of cellular self-destruction that scientists are only now beginning to fully understand. And Demi Moore's emotional exposure reveals that she was actively killing herself, trying to stay beautiful, and the only way she survived was by making a choice that most of us would find absolutely terrifying. She didn't seek out a smoother face, she sought out a quieter mind. This shift in perspective is the ultimate plot twist in her life story, and it is a blueprint that could save us all from our own inner critics. This role was not just an acting gig for Demi. It was a mirror reflecting her own lifelong battle with self-judgment. She has noted in multiple interviews that she had to completely let go of any part of her that valued perfection in order to deliver this performance. Think about the iconic scene in the movie where Elizabeth is preparing for a date. She stands in front of the mirror, applies her makeup, looks at her reflection, and immediately sees flaws. She aggressively wipes the makeup off, tries again, and eventually spirals into a state of panic, unable to leave her apartment because she cannot bear the thought of being seen as less than perfect. Demi admitted that this scene was painfully easy to perform because she spent her entire 20s and 30s doing the exact same thing in real life. When she was at the absolute peak of her physical beauty in the eyes of the public, she was privately tormented by her own mind. This is the first supporting example of how our internal narrative distorts our reality. She was considered one of the most beautiful women on earth, yet in her own mind, she was fundamentally flawed. A second example is how we use language to frame aging. We tell women they look great for their age, or that they haven't aged a bit, as if aging itself is a disease to be cured or hidden. This language reinforces the idea that aging is a failure of willpower or maintenance, rather than a natural, beautiful progression. The third example is the physical consequence of this mental stress. Demi has famously stated that holding on to upset, anger, hurt, pain, or bitterness ages us far faster than any natural biological process. When we carry emotional baggage, it shows on our faces, in our posture, and in our energy. Her ageless glow at 62 is not a result of fighting aging. It is the result of finally stopping the war against herself. It is the physical manifestation of emotional liberation. The paradox of the younger self is one of the most counterintuitive aspects of Demi's journey. In the film, her character creates Sue, played by Margaret Qualley, a 20-year-old version of herself who is physically flawless but entirely devoid of life experience, depth, or genuine connection. Sue represents the societal ideal of youth, yet she is greedy, reckless, and ultimately destructive. This serves as a brilliant metaphor for the trap of chasing our past. Demi reflects on how we look back at our younger selves with a sense of longing, forgetting that when we were 20 or 30, we were often filled with insecurity, doubt, and self-loathing. We romanticize the youth we lost while ignoring the mental peace and wisdom we have gained. Why do we crave a state of being that we didn't even enjoy when we had it? The entertainment industry and broader society want us to believe that losing our youth is the beginning of the end. But Demi argues that this perspective is completely wrong. In fact, she has stated that anyone who thinks getting older means life is less is sadly mistaken. At 62, she has described her life as incredibly fun, liberating, and full of vitality. By letting go of the need to play the youthful starlet, she actually unlocked a more powerful version of herself. This is a complete inversion of how Hollywood operates. Instead of hiding her age, she laid her body bare on screen, exposing every wrinkle, every vulnerability, and every fear, proving that true power comes from vulnerability rather than a curated image of perfection. She has effectively decoupled her sense of worth from her physical appearance, a feat that is almost unheard of in an industry that commodifies women's bodies. So how do we apply Demi's profound realization to our own lives? It starts with understanding the biological link between self-judgment and physical aging. When we look in the mirror and experience feelings of disgust or inadequacy, our bodies release cortisol, the primary stress hormone. Chronic elevation of cortisol levels leads to increased inflammation, which breaks down collagen and elastin, accelerating the formation of wrinkles and dulling the skin's natural glow. Furthermore, scientific studies have shown that chronic emotional stress shortens our telomeres, which are the protective caps on the ends of our chromosomes. Shortened telomeres are directly linked to cellular aging and a shorter lifespan. Therefore, when Demi says that holding on to bitterness and pain wears us down, she is not just speaking metaphorically, she is speaking biologically. The first step to breaking this cycle is the practice of neutral observation. When you look in the mirror, train your mind to view your features without attaching a value judgment of good or bad. See your skin, your eyes, and your body as functional vessels that carry you through life, rather than objects to be constantly graded. The second step is the active release of emotional residue. Demi emphasizes the importance of mindfulness and emotional hygiene. We must learn to process our anger and hurt rather than storing them in our tissues, because those unresolved emotions eventually carve themselves into our faces and drain our vitality. The third step is to actively reject the commodification of our appearance. We must build an identity based on our character, our connections, and our contributions rather than our surface aesthetic. By doing so, we shield ourselves from the toxic messages of the beauty industry and build the foundation of resilience that time cannot erode. We see the tragic results of the alternative approach all around us. There are countless individuals, both in Hollywood and in everyday life, who fall into the trap of endless cosmetic procedures in an attempt to freeze time. They chase an artificial standard of youth, only to find themselves looking increasingly disconnected from their true selves. Their faces become masks of frozen expressions, devoid of the warmth and character that come with lived experience. Contrast this with the story Demi shares about her teenage years in Los Angeles. She lived in an apartment complex with a young German actress named Nastasia Kinski. Demi recalls looking at Nastasia and seeing a deep, unshakable comfort in her own skin. She didn't desire Nastasia's physical features. She desired that internal comfort. This became her ultimate goal. When Demi received standing ovations at the Cannes Film Festival and won a Golden Globe for her performance in The Substance, it was a triumph not just for her acting, but for her philosophy. She stood on those global stages as a 62-year-old woman who had faced her darkest insecurities, exposed them to the world, and emerged stronger, happier, and more radiant than ever before. Her success is living proof that the world is hungry for authenticity and that there is a profound, magnetic beauty in a person who refuses to apologize for their age. In the end, the unexposed secret to Demi Moore's agelessness is that there is no shortcut, no magic green serum, and no cosmetic procedure that can replace the beauty of self-acceptance. The true substance of a beautiful life is the courage to stand before your own reflection, acknowledge your history, and choose to love yourself exactly as you are in this moment. Gravity will always do its work on our physical bodies, but it has no power over a soul that is light, free, and at peace. If you want to understand how this psychological shift can fundamentally change not just your appearance, but the entire trajectory of your life, you need to understand how the brain rewires itself when we stop seeking external validation, a concept we explore in our deep dive into the psychology of self-mastery. Click on the video on your screen right now to discover how to break the cycle of self-judgment and unlock your true potential. Because the journey to self-acceptance is the only path that never fades.